standing in a forgotten tomb, holding a centuries-old drum. Bodies of bandits lie at your feet, fresh corpses, no visible wounds. In your hand is a journal that reads like a horror story, detailing exactly how they died. Drained, enslaved, added to a collection. You've walked into an active crime scene for a murder that happened over 1,000 years ago, and the killer is still here, still waiting in the dark, psychically whispering to his next victim. Welcome to Halldir's Cairn, where the Bards College just accidentally sent you to solve the coldest case in Skyrim's history. And the single best piece of evidence is a line buried in a dead bandit's journal. 4 words that connect recent horror to an ancient pattern. We'll serve him soon, our bodies, our souls, just like the others. That line tells us this happened before. Many times before. One of those others is a famous Second Era bard named Rehyorn. Let me show you exactly how we solved this murder. Our investigation starts in the warm, bustling halls of the Bards College in Solitude, the least likely place for a murder mystery. A respected institution where young musicians learn their craft and historians work to preserve Skyrim's cultural heritage. Here, we meet Gerard Germain, the college's Dean of History. He's a scholar with a professional request. Through the college's research, they've identified the location of a long-lost artifact, Rehyorn's drum. According to Gerard, Rehyorn was a famous battle drummer from the Second Era, a legendary figure whose rhythms once inspired armies. The college believes his drum rests with him in his tomb, a place called Halldir's Cairn, southwest of Falkreath. The request couldn't be simpler. Travel to the tomb, retrieve the drum, bring it back for preservation. Standard historical recovery work. And this makes perfect sense. While the College of Winterhold hoards arcane knowledge and magical secrets, the Bards College dedicates itself to preserving history, culture, and oral tradition. We see this mission in their other quests: recovering Finn's flute, finding Pentia's flute, tracking down lost verses of King Olaf's epic. Straightforward artifact recovery missions. And Rehyorn's drum appears to be another item on that list. A piece of history waiting to be reclaimed from a forgotten tomb. But search for information about this supposedly famous bard and you'll find nothing. No history books mention his name, no epic poems detail his deeds. No songs are sung in taverns celebrating the great battle drummer Rehyorn. Search every library, read every historical text in Skyrim if you must, and Rehyorn simply doesn't exist. His entire legacy lives only in the specialized oral traditions of the Bards College itself. To everyone else in Skyrim, to all of Tamriel, he's a complete unknown. This obscurity is our first major clue. The victim is a ghost long before we ever find his grave. To understand how a famous bard could be so thoroughly erased from history, we need to understand the age he lived in. The Second Era was 4 centuries of absolute chaos. Historians call it the Interregnum, a period where the Ruby Throne sat empty and the Empire fractured into warring kingdoms. The Akaviri potentates desperately tried to hold together a crumbling empire, only to be assassinated, plunging Cyrodiil into deeper darkness. The Three Banners War erupted, tearing the Imperial heartland apart in a brutal contest for supremacy. In Skyrim, petty kings carved up the holds, fighting endless territorial wars. Orc warlords like Yashnag established kingdoms in places like Falkreath, only to be driven out decades later. Constant warfare, shifting borders, entire cities rising and falling. In an age like that, a single bard, even the greatest one, is a candle flame in a hurricane. His story wouldn't be carefully preserved in the Imperial Library. There was no stable Imperial Library. His deeds wouldn't be recorded in official chronicles because there were no stable authorities keeping chronicles. His story would be passed mouth to mouth, from soldier to soldier, from master bard to apprentice. That kind of oral history is fragile. If enough people die, if the chain even gets broken once, his story disappears. Rehyorn was living history. When he died, that history died with him, surviving only as a faint echo in the archives of a single institution that still bothered to remember. This historical obscurity makes Rehyorn the perfect victim. When he vanished, no one came looking. There were no royal investigations, no search parties, no imperial inquiries. He was another casualty of a violent age. His story swallowed by chaos and war, because no one would miss him. No one would even question how he died or where he ended up. With this deceptively simple task of retrieving a drum from a forgotten tomb, We head south into Falkreath Hold. The hold is notorious for its gloom, its ancient pine forests thick enough to block out the sun, and its deep association with death. Falkreath is home to the largest graveyard in all of Skyrim, a sprawling necropolis where both heroes and commoners rest side by side. The air itself is heavy, soaked in centuries of sorrow and loss. As you leave the main roads and push deeper into the wilderness, the trees close in. The light dims. The cheerful sounds of civilization fade away, replaced by the whisper of wind through branches and the distant call of wolves. Following your map marker, you eventually arrive at a desolate stone structure half buried in a hillside, its entrance yawning like an open mouth. Halldir's Cairn. The moment you lay eyes on it, something feels wrong. Ancient Nordic tombs, for all their Draugr-infested dangers, are usually places of honor. They feature grand entrance halls, walls carved with intricate stories of heroic deeds, elaborate puzzles designed to test the wisdom of those who enter. They're monuments to a life well lived, built to ensure the deceased's glorious passage to Sovngarde. Even in death, the ancient Nords celebrated their warriors and kings. However, this place lacks all of that. There is no grand architecture, no carved murals celebrating life. The entrance is a stark, unwelcoming, almost hostile place. It doesn't feel like a place of honor at all. It feels hungry. The moment you step inside Halldir's Cairn, the air is wrong, cold and oppressive, like the atmosphere is pressing down on you. Bodies lie on the ground, fresh bodies. They're arranged in a rough circle around a strange, glowing stone structure, lying there like they just fell asleep. But they're all dead. No scratches on any of them, no wounds, no signs of violence, and no indication of how they died. And a quick search will reveal their identities. Agrias, Rehyorn, and Vidgrod, members of the notorious Knife Point gang, hardened raiders known through Skyrim for their brutality and survival skills. These were professionals, killers, people who know how to handle themselves in hostile territory. Yet here they lie, dead without a fight, arranged around this cairn like ritual offerings. On a stone pedestal sits a journal, Agrias' journal. The moment you start reading it, you realize this documents their final, horrifying days, and it tells us everything we need to know about what really happened to Rehyorn. Let me walk you through what Agrias documented, because every entry reveals another layer of Halldir's hunting method. The journal starts out innocently enough. The bandits sought shelter from a storm and found this cave. Almost immediately, something starts influencing them. Vidgrod and Rehyorn both want to set up here for a while, maybe do some raiding. They seem awfully insistent about staying here. Wouldn't even lend a hand when I went out to hunt tonight. This is stage 1. It's the trap, the lure. Something about this place creates an overwhelming, irrational desire to stay. A subtle psychic influence, a gentle nudge that overrides survival instincts and common sense. These are bandits. They should recognize this as a terrible location for establishing a base. Isolated, defenseless, strategically worthless for raiding. But somehow this thought just never occurs to them. They just want to be here. Agrias is the only one feeling a flicker of doubt, but even he can't quite bring himself to leave. The next entries show the influence growing stronger, more invasive. Something's wrong. Rehyorn hasn't said a word since she woke up this morning, just keeps staring off into space. Vidgrod isn't much better. They sick? Not like any illness I ever heard of. I just walk out on them, but I can't seem to get up the nerve. I feel like something's holding me back. This is stage 2, suppression of will. The entity controlling this place has moved beyond suggestion. Now it's commanding, stripping away their personalities, their autonomy, their very selves, turning them into passive, empty vessels. Rehyorn has become a silent, staring shell. Vidgrod is nearly gone. Agrias feels his own will crumbling, the desire to flee being smothered by an invisible force. He's trapped by the prison of his own compromised mind. And then the monster reveals itself. We're not alone. I can hear him now, someone speaking in my mind. Old, powerful. Halldir, that's the name. He wants something from us, needs to stay for the magic to work. I tried to run. Can't. This is confirmation. The predator has a name. Halldir. He's a powerful telepath capable of invading minds and bending wills like clay. A conscious, intelligent predator. He's been playing with his prey this entire time, slowly tightening his psychic grip. The journal's entry descends into pure horror as Agrias understands what Halldir wants. Rehyorn jumped first, onto the Cairn. That's what the Master wants. Blood, sacrifice, power to live again. His magic, I can feel it pulsing in my blood. He's draining us. We'll serve him soon. Our bodies, our souls, just like the others. Waiting. It's my turn. And the complete picture emerges. Halldir is a psychic vampire, a unique form of lich that sustains his unnatural existence by draining the life force from anyone who enters his domain. The Cairn is a feeding mechanism. That glowing light manifests absorbed life energy. The bodies aren't buried here. They're consumed here. Those words I mentioned at the start of the video, just like the others, that's the smoking gun. This has happened before. Many times before. For centuries, Halldir has been operating this psychic death trap, luring in victims, feeding on them, and binding their souls to serve him in death. Agrias' journal transforms this entire quest. We're investigating an active serial killer whose hunting grounds has been operational for over 1,000 years. But what exactly is Halldir? The game labels him as a drugger, but that classification is based purely on convenience. He's undead. He's in a Nordic tomb, therefore he's a Draugr. His behavior is completely alien to everything we know about actual Draugr. Traditional Draugr are the cursed servants of the dragon cult, ancient Nords who underwent dark rituals, binding themselves to eternal service as guardians of dragon priest tombs. They're territorial and dangerous for sure, but they're largely mindless. Animated corpses driven by a single overriding purpose: protect the tomb. They don't hunt beyond their domain. They don't lure travelers with psychic whispers, and they don't feed on souls to sustain themselves. Halldir breaks every rule of what a Draugr is. He's fully sentient, he's actively hunting. His methods of telepathic domination, life force draining, and soul binding are the hallmarks of powerful, necromantic mages and vampire lords, not Nordic warriors. He's taken this ancient cairn and transformed it into a psychic Venus flytrap, a perfectly engineered killing machine. The facade of a forgotten tomb provides isolation and legitimacy. The promise of treasure provides the bait. For centuries, he's waited in the darkness, psychically whispering into the minds of the curious, the desperate, and the greedy, drawing them in, feeding on them, adding their corpses to his collection of undead puppets, their souls to his reservoir of stolen power. And thanks to the Bards College's innocent research, we've just walked straight into his trap. Stepping past corpses and through the ancient stone doorway, you descend into Halldir's true domain. The temperature drops, the air becomes thick and heavy, saturated with centuries of death and dark magic. What strikes you immediately is how fundamentally wrong this place feels compared to every other Nordic tomb in Skyrim. They were monuments designed to honor the dead and guide their spirits on the journey to Sovngarde. Halldir's Cairn has none of that. Walk through its corridors and you'll find no carvings celebrating life, no grand halls or altars to the divines, no evidence of honor or remembrance at all. The space is cold, functional, and hostile. The corridors are narrow and maze-like. The chambers are stark and empty. A machine designed to process raw material, and you are that raw material. As you push deeper into the complex, you encounter its defenses. Wispy, translucent ghosts materialize through the stone walls, their silent screams echoing in your mind. These are the tormented souls of Halldir's victims, bound to their murderer even in death, forced to serve as his guards for eternity. Further in, you face a Draugr, but even they feel different from the ones you fought in other tombs. They don't rise with slow, stiff movement of ancient corpses. They twitch and jerk like puppets on strings, animated by fresh necromantic energy. These are the physical remains of recent victims. Maybe even people who entered this place years ago, decades ago, added to Halldir's collection. The deeper sections of the cairn present puzzle chambers, rotating stone pillars marked with ancient Nordic glyphs. The hawk, the snake, the whale. In a legitimate tomb, these puzzles would serve as tests of wisdom, ensuring only the worthy could approach the honored dead. You can think of them as gates of respect. Here, the gates are on a larder. They exist to slow down prey, to disorient them, to wear them down before the final confrontation. Another layer of psychological warfare. By the time you solve these puzzles and fight through the ghostly guards, you're supposed to be exhausted, paranoid, wondering what fresh horror awaits around each corner. After navigating the maze of undead and ancient mechanisms, you reach the main burial chamber, a deep vertical shaft with an unnatural light emanating from the bottom. There, floating in the center of that corrupted radiance, is Halldir himself. He's a spectral mage, his form crackling with barely contained magical energy, fire, frost, lightning swirling around him like a storm given form. The moment he spots you, the battle begins. Halldir demonstrates why he's survived for over a millennium as Skyrim's most successful predator. He splits himself. His essence fractures into distinct, fully autonomous forms. One wreathed in flame, one encased in ice, and one pulsing with raw lightning. You're fighting multiple identical copies, each wielding a different school of destruction magic. This is the ultimate expression of his predatory nature. For centuries, Halldir has been consuming life force, absorbing the raw magicka, the spiritual essence, the very souls of his victims. He's become so saturated with stolen power that he can weaponize it, projecting it outward as separate, sentient beings. He is literally attacking you with the lives he's consumed. Every fireball, ice spike, and lightning bolt, that's the weaponized essence of someone who walked into this cairn before you, someone who died there, someone whose soul Halldir absorbed and now uses as ammunition. Necromantic mastery far beyond any common draugr or hedge wizard, the power of a being who has perfected the art of parasitic immortality. The fire is chaos. Fire, ice, and lightning fill the chamber. You have to destroy each of his elemental projections individually, forcing his fractured consciousness to reassemble. Only when all forms are defeated can you face the unified Halldir, weakened, but still formidable, still dangerous, and still fighting to preserve his centuries-long feeding cycle. With a final strike, the ancient necromancer dissolves into ethereal dust. The whispers that have echoed through this place for over 1,000 years fall silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifts. The chamber feels lighter somehow, like a curse has been broken. As you search the room, you find the traditional boss chest, ornate and ancient. You open it, and there, nestled along some gold and a piece of enchanted armor, is Rehyorn's drum. Not displayed on an altar, not placed reverently in a sarcophagus, tossed in a loot chest like any other piece of dungeon treasure. The final, damning piece of evidence. The legendary instrument of a famous bard wasn't laid to rest with honor, it was taken from his corpse and thrown in a box. This confirms the terrible truth we've been building toward. Rehyorn was never buried here, he was murdered here. Sometime during the chaos of the Second Era, a battle drummer named Rehyorn traveled through the forests of Falkreath Hold. Maybe he was seeking new stories to tell, new songs to learn. Maybe he was escorting a military unit and got separated during a skirmish. Maybe he was passing through, trying to survive in an age of constant war. As he traveled near an old, forgotten cairn, he heard something, a whisper in his mind, a voice, old and powerful, promising shelter from the storm, or perhaps treasure, or maybe knowledge of lost songs, the kind of lure that would be irresistible to a bard. Rehyorn entered the cairn, maybe alone, maybe with companions. We know the fragments of college lore that he disappeared with others, the same number that always seems to appear in Halldir's hunting pattern. Once inside, the trap activated. Halldir's telepathic influence seized control of their minds. The psychic pressure built slowly, stripping away free will and turning them from thinking individuals into passive victims. They were led, docile and helpless, down the main chamber. There at the glowing cairn we saw, surrounded by Agrias's group, they were sacrificed. Their life force was drained away, siphoned off to fuel Halldir's continued existence. Their bodies were reanimated to serve as guards, adding to the cairn's defenses. Their souls, bound to Halldir, trapped in eternal servitude, to join countless others already imprisoned there. And Rehyorn's most prized possession, his drum, was tossed into a loot pile, forgotten. For over 1,000 years, the story ended there. Rehyorn was lost to history. In the chaos of the interregnum, nobody came looking. Nobody investigated. Nobody even knew where to start searching. The Bards College preserved his name in their oral traditions, but even they only had fragments, some vague hints about a lost drummer and a missing instrument. Halldir continued his silent hunt, feeding on anyone unlucky enough to stumble into his psychic web. Adventurers, treasure hunters, bandits seeking shelter, all of them drawn in by whispers only they could hear, all of them dying the same way, all of them just like the others. Centuries later, the Bards College's archival research bears fruit. Working from those fragmented oral histories, they identify Halldir's cairn as a possible location of interest. They don't know it's an active crime scene, they think it's a tomb. So they do what they've always done. They dispatch someone to recover a piece of lost history. They send us. By completing what seemed like a simple fetch quest, we did something nobody's done in over a millennium. We walked into an active serial killer's lair, uncovered the evidence of his crimes, confronted him, and ended his predatory existence. We recovered an artifact, solved a murder, and avenged Rehyorn, Agrius, Rayan, Vidgrod, and countless others whose names have been lost to time. We broke the cycle. Everything you need to solve this mystery is right there in the game. Gerard's dialogue, the environmental storytelling, Agrius' journal, Halldir's unique abilities, the drum in the chest. Bethesda didn't spell it out for us. They trusted players like us to put the pieces together. Most players never do. They grab the drum, fast travel back to Solitude, collect their reward, and move on to the next quest. But you understand what really happened now in that forgotten Cairn. Skyrim is filled with stories like this, dark, complex narratives hiding behind seemingly simple objectives. How many other Radiant quests are actually unsolved mysteries? How many other of these fetch missions are really cold cases waiting for someone to connect the dots? And what's your theory? Drop a comment down below telling me what other simple Skyrim quests you think hide darker stories. Thank you so much for watching, and you should click this video because I did a video on how the Emperor is actually the one behind the entire Oblivion crisis.